dreams die. Rely on yourself in no way. Believe.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everyone had a good weekend, a good week. It's the weekend coming. It's not here yet. I'm looking forward to it that much that I'm already thinking I had it. Um, Next week, I gave you the lineup, and so you should be seeing them populate here pretty soon. I think it's a pretty good lineup. I'm looking forward to it myself. Today, however, um, I had said on the mix. If you caught the mix, it was a good show. Um, we were discussing depression in men, and I did take note of a couple of the comments after near the end of the show. Um, People were wondering why it is that I went quiet. Um, so I wanted to address it, but it occurred to me that I needed to address it with one other person first. And in my addressing it to God, um, the reason I want to tell you the reason I was as quiet as I was. I was in a mode of trying to weigh what was being said against what my history in my mind does. So I had to try and reconcile what truth was being said to how I was feeling at the time. And silence is the best way for me, as well as listening. So there was no enmity, hate, nothing like that going on in me. I wasn't mad. I wasn't nothing. So I don't want anybody reading that into it. That was me being contemplative. Okay. I was just trying to reason in my mind what was being said, how to take it, how to weigh it against what my history was, and weed out what truth there was on a human level first. And then I was going to take it to God that night. And I did. I did take it to him. And subsequently, I got a whole bunch of um, inbox messages and emails and all that stuff. Whether concerned, you don't need to be concerned. I'm not depressed or anything like that. That was me in contemplation. When I have something that is stuff I don't necessarily know the answer to right off. Uh, Sorry to hear that, Akila. I had to make sure that my mind was understanding what was going on. So when I took it to God about who I was and the validity of the things that I go through when I have these um, moments of, I can't call it uncontrollable tears, but it's like I can't bring myself to not feel that emotion. And he made something very abundantly clear to me, and that was whatever he has been allowing, don't question. Um, this has been a part of me since birth. That some may call it sensitive. I don't know if that's what it would actually be. Um, I think it's more akin to recognizing pain elsewhere and not internalizing it, but understanding what it's actually doing to the person. Empathy is what men may call it. Um, but then he took me to some passages that kind of applied to it to help me break down more efficiently um, what I was experiencing at the time and every time. And so what he took me to was two different locations. Um, so we're gonna tackle those right now. Um, we're gonna dive in to show you exactly what he showed me for me. And if you're anything like the kind of personality type that I am and person that I am, then it would apply to you too. If it doesn't, then take it with a grain of pink sea salt, I guess. Anyway, so here we go. We're gonna dive right in. Okay, so in Romans chapter 12, and yeah, some Himalayan salt. Y'all deal with them Himalayan salt if you don't like what it says. Okay, like I said, I wanted to go at this particular topic today because it was kind of something that he led me to. And if there are people out there that are like this, um, um, just know that it is not me trying to defend myself or put down anyone else on the show. That is not what this is. Do not in any way, shape, form, or fashion take this program today to mean I'm airing grievances. I am simply stating what God said to me when I took my grievance about myself to Him. When I took my inability to understand what was going on to Him. Because the same thing I tell you to do, I do myself. If there is something that I run into that seems like a buzz saw, or I'm in a location of unawareness or something is not right, I take it to the author. I'm not going to tell you to do something I'm not willing to do myself. So if there's any sort of mindset about that, dump it, please, before we go any further. This has nothing to do with that show. This has everything to do with me approaching God about information that I received from men who do follow God, or at least a man that follows God. I know for sure Corey. I'm not going to speak for Mello and Shamar. I know Corey personally. I know him. So it's not like he was trying to be malicious or anything in anything he said. That is exactly how Corey is. And he does not budge from that because that's who God built him to be. But what he mentioned to me did cause me to think about myself as a man, my history, and what was associated with the times that I did become emotional, which is why, like I said, I went silent because all of that time I was contemplating and reasoning in my mind if what he was saying had merit to it compared to what I was growing up with. That is what was going on. And so when I took that conflict in me to God, he clarified it for me. And so I wanted to make sure that people, if anyone out there that had the reasoning that I do, history I may have had, I want you to understand something about that particular type of build that God made you to be. Okay. So in Romans 12, let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good, be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, giving to hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be the same mind toward another. Do not set your mind on the things, but on high things, but associated with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Which is exactly why I didn't want to be wise in my opinion, and I took it to the author. Now, the part that, of course, you would probably say jumps out would be rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That was the initial grasp. And then 10 is what really be kindly and affectionate to one another with brotherly love. And that was the first linchpin that brought me some sort of understanding about what happens to me when I hear something that may affect me emotionally. And the conclusion that was drawn for me was that that expression is not a sign that I'm no less man. Um, it's just that my calling is different. It's a completely different calling. Now, I've talked a lot about being a Peter and not, being very straight with my words, and I am that. But there is a side that most don't see to me, which is that um, empathic side. Some people that have had personal interaction with me have seen it. The journey brought out a lot of that in me, and I think that is where it really came to fruition, was in the journey series. Um, and I don't think that he could have used me correctly if he had not given me that particular trait. The journey was one of the most impactful um, things I've ever been through. And it kind of exposed me to a different side of myself, which was um, the ear and the assistant. But in the grand scheme of this particular topic, it made me aware that it's not bad. Now, uncontrolled, if I allow it to take over, it becomes a problem, a very big problem. Because what ends up happening if I let, and this was part of why I was thinking that night, because it is true that if you allow yourself to have the leeway of emotional expression, there comes a point where you have to understand that it runs its course and it's done. It doesn't perpetually continue to the point where you're incapacitated and you can't be any good to anyone else. Because whether we want to believe it or not, it can take you into bouts of depression and away from actual what it's supposed to do, which is to identify with someone else who is going through something. It can take you into a location where you are now the victim. And that is where the self control comes in. You can only get that self control, of course, from God, but implementing it is on your side. That is something you have to execute, is self control. So then he took me to another location about that exact same thought process. And the place that he took me was to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I'm sure you guys know what that's about. Because this is the point where the self control idea comes in. Okay, this is where the self controlled idea comes in. Like I said, he took me on quite the extensive roundabout journey to figure this out. Now, so Stacy, um, fully understand that. Like I mean, fully understand that, and that is part of grieving because you were fully loved. Okay, so um, that has its course. It has its time that it needs to run. Our problem is that sometimes we allow it to invade every aspect of our life where we are no longer able to do anything else. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. So here, um, the scriptures have always been in my head. I've known these scriptures for a long time. They're since I've been young. He just brought them back to my memory. That's all he did. But he took me to exactly where it was. So he told me what they were, and I found them. That's usually how he does it. Ecclesiastes 3. To everything, and you probably heard, who is it that did this song? Um, Remind me of the group that did this song. Turn, turn, turn. The Birds? Is it the Birds? I think it's the Birds that did turn, turn, turn. Y'all probably know the verse and didn't know it wasn't a song back in the 70s. Anyway, uh, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the sun or the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. So when he brought that back to my recollection, like I said, I've been in the so-called church since I was small, okay, young, from my infancy, and you retain a lot of verses and books, and and you may not always know exactly where they are, but the sentiment stays in your mind. Kind of like when he said, "I've hidden your word in my heart, so it may not depart from me," that kind of thing. I don't always think I need to remember exactly where it is because I can always go find it. But he does bring certain things back to my recollection, and that's what he did with this. This is part of why I say that having the Holy Spirit is more impacting than just reading. Because I did read, but I didn't go back to reading to find the answer. I went to God to find the answer, and He brought back to my memory that which I already read. The book was already in my head, but I did not have any application to it because He did not. I couldn't bring it back to memory. He did. He brought it back to me. When I asked Him about something that had to do, He brought back what He needed to tell me. So, in this particular thing here, this verse, there were a couple of things that jumped out, and I want to break down a couple of things here. Okay. So he said, a time to weep and a time to laugh and a time to mourn and a time to dance. Weeping, to shed tears of an expression of emotion, to express grief or anguish, to lament, to bring to a specified condition by weeping. Mourning, to feel or express grief or sorrow, to show grief for a death or conventional sign, or by wearing black clothes, to make low, indistinct, mournful sound. Now, one is a whole lot deeper of a feeling than the other, which is why they were separated. Which is why they were separated. When he said a time for weeping and a time to laugh and a time to mourn and a time to dance, if you realize that the laughing and dancing, one's a little bit more involved than the other. The same with weeping and mourning. And he says there's a time for both, but there is a time for it, including a time limit for it. It happens for a time and it's done. I do understand too what excessive mourning can do to a soul. And I do know there is a need for weeping. A lost loved one. If you're really involved in sports and you lost, you cry. You stub your toe. You're in pain. But weeping is an emotional occurrence, not physical pain that brings it on. It's an emotional thing, it's a spirit thing. And there is a time for it, both in event and in longevity. Dwelling there is our problem. Many people dwell in weeping and mourning. They can't seem to break free of either one. What the Spirit of God will help you do is break free. It will allow you to go through that, get past it, and move on. It'll allow you to do that. When my dad passed, I mourned. I didn't just weep and I didn't just cry. I mourned. And my mourning didn't really stop for another 30 years. It's a long time to mourn. I took my mourning to an unhealthy level. There is a time to allow for that, for the feeling of someone else's pain, for the feeling of your own pain, but it only lasts a season. If you find yourself going through an extended period of mourning, one, it's very unhealthy. And two, you have not found the Holy Spirit to hand it off to. And if you do say you possess the Holy Spirit, you need to hand it off. Otherwise, his title of Comforter and Prince of Peace and all that stuff is irrelevant. It's irrelevant at that point. He can't be both a comforter while you're not being comforted by him because you're not going to him for comfort and still call him that. He can't ease your burden if you don't give him the burden. But he is the only way for you to fully give that up. It took me 37 years to really let go. Now don't get me wrong. I still miss my dad. It's just a natural part of my life. I miss my pops. I see my small boy and I see my older boys and I wish they could have met their grandpa. There's nothing wrong with me hoping and wishing they had met their grandpa because he was a ridiculously cool guy. He was a ridiculously cool guy. So yeah, I wish they would have met him. And I wish he would have met them. I that is that for me, I don't think there's anything untoward about that because I know the kind of person he was. But at the same time, I cannot let that pervade my thought process. It has happened. It is done. God has me where He has me, and He has me on a mission. And I cannot be sidetracked by mourning for something that He has already taken. There is no such thing for me as a wasted time necessarily, because now I have the point. If I look back at wasted time, I would be living in regret, and I don't want to live there. Oh, it took me so long to get. I got here. I'm here now. I'm here now. That's all I am. The reaching back into thinking how long it took me. I can see that it took me a while, but it's inconsequential to the fact that I'm here now. Um, and I saw Ned ask a question. Yeah, it was at 37 years old that I finally got some sort of breakthrough with the Lord about that. Um, but at the same time, here's the thing, right? Here's also why I don't consider it wasted. Your life and the things you go through is not just for you. Believe it or not, it's mirrored somewhere else in someone else's life. Your ability to hand it off to God will help you be able to do exactly what it said in Romans: be kindly and affectionate to one another. You can rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep because you understand what rejoicing and weeping is. And you can also tell them it's not a place to stay because you didn't stay there either. But if you did stay there and they've been there for a while and you did break free, you also know how to handle that. So, no, I don't think anything that we go through is wasted. I think once you've handed it off to Christ Himself, you don't have to worry about whether it was wasted, it will be used. It will be used. Even if He has to bring it back to your recollection while talking to somebody and they see that you are still in a place where you can identify it, cry about it, and recover right away, it gives them the license to understand that I can break free of this. The same way I tell people that I still miss my dad. I don't think that'll stop. I still miss my dad. I wouldn't be human if I didn't. But I don't miss him to the point where I can't do anything else and I can't function and I want to die too. I'm not there anymore. I remember the awesomeness that he was and I remember that he passed, but I don't dwell in the anger and I don't dwell in the hurt. It was a time and that time is gone. And while he still comes back to memory fondly and the missing still happens, I don't just break out into tears now when I remember him. Is it right there? Of course it's right there because I remember the man. I remember everything about him. So for those who have lost people, I don't I don't tell them to stop weeping. Like say for instance, my daughter, her grandmother died. I think I told you she died suddenly month or so ago now, and we're going to be having a memorial for her at the end of this month. Now, my daughter is having a hard time because they were really close. They were close, really close. She loved that woman, and man, her grandma loved her. It was just a really sweet connection they had. So this is really hard on my daughter. Now, I can look at my child and understand exactly, and I mean exactly what she's going through. I can allow her the time to mourn because she needs to understand what that meant to her, what that relationship was to her. It's okay for her to go through that period of both anger and sadness, and all that needs to come out. Because here's the problem with bottling it up and trying to be strong for everybody else. Eventually it'll break you. It'll break you eventually. The advantage of me having gone through it now is that I can now sit with her, be exactly where she is, and help her past that point to exactly where I am. That's the advantage of time. Like Solomon says, there is a season, there's a time for everything. Now, I have no doubt that at the memorial, my daughter will lose it again, and that's understandable. But I also have to be there to curb her right back, to have her understand that this is for a time. I'm not going to dictate how long. That's between her and God. But she needs to be aware that this only lasts so long. Mourning for both men and women take on a whole different time frame. And it also depends on who you are, the type of person you are. But regardless of all of that, it does not last forever. It should not last forever. It's not meant to last forever. It's not meant to. For me, it took me to the darkest portions of my mind. This is what prolonging it does. Okay, listen carefully. Prolonged mourning and prolonged weeping without handing it off will take you to places where you want to end yourself as well to get rid of the pain. You have now internalized death into your life and your living. Not a healthy situation at all. By the time you get to that point, suicide's your friend. You may not even call it depression. You may just call it sadness. I'm just sad. And then your sadness may just turn it into, I can't get past this sadness, so I'm done. Some of us turn to anger. Some of us turn to both. But the end result is always the same. I need this done. And the best way I know how, notice I know how, is to end. However, if you're in that space, I want to proffer something to you. If you are in that place where you are between the keeping of the anger or the sadness or killing yourself, consider a different death. Consider a different death. Let me give you a secondary option, okay? And if you can listen through the tears for just a minute, let me offer you another alternative. Die to self. Not end yourself, but die to self. See, because here's what happens it goes from mourning for the person to mourning for yourself. And pretty soon you've forgotten the memory of the person, and now you are just hating yourself, and the person has nothing to do with it. The person you've lost has nothing to do with it. The situation, nothing to do with it. You have now internalized it and put it on yourself, and now you are the center of your mourning. You have now left the memory of that person all the way in the dust. You've flushed it down the toilet, and now you are the center of everything. Answer me this. What good is killing yourself to the memory of the person? What good is it? What's that going to do for you or for anyone else around you? All you're doing is just perpetuating the cycle. Someone else that held you in that spot will be mourning for you. And then by the time they figure out that that was your outcome, why not do it themselves? And then the person that's holding them as close as they held you. And you see the cycle? It perpetuates. So I'm offering you another idea. Die to that portion of yourself by giving it over to God. He is peace. I'm telling you from experience, personal experience. This is not something I'm just pulling out of my behind. It's personal experience. That when he tells you he will take it, he does. When he tells you that he will remove all of it, he does. Man calls it empathy. Um, I said, I keep telling people when that happens, if it's a normal thing, he needs to take that to God to find out what the purpose of it is. He doesn't put stuff on you for you not to use for others, for the kingdom. It's for the kingdom. All of it's for the kingdom. It's not just for me. My feelings for other people is not for me. That's for the kingdom. My daughter is part of the kingdom. My going through what I went through now to help her is for the kingdom, not just for her. It's for the kingdom. You need to take all of it back to the king. You have to. Weeping and mourning is a heavy burden. He says he's going to lift your burden. He is peace. Now, Dolores, is not easy. Okay, understand this. And I want to be frank with you. The best part of doing this, I have to be frank with you. You are going to have to fight yourself because, look, you've been in this spot. Okay. I'm talking about people who are mourning. I'm not talking necessarily about you, Dolores, and your husband. If your husband really wants an answer for why he feels that way, that's the only answer I have for him is to have God direct it. Okay. But for those of us who are lost people, if we lost people, you are going to have to fight yourself to bring it to God. I'm going to say something that you may not. You actually enjoy mourning. It becomes something now that if you don't do it, you don't feel like you're human enough. It will eventually become your marker for feeling human. And it can be confused for empathy. And it will become your excuse to be and dwell in that spot. That's what will end up happening. You will end up grabbing a hold of that emotional pain and turmoil, internalizing it, and it will become you. And before too long, you don't know where you stop and it begins. You won't know. And then your whole life is depression. It all stems from us not trusting God enough. Let's just go back to the truth about it. It really comes back to you not trusting God enough. I didn't. I did not trust God enough. I don't think I even trust him at all. Heck, I didn't even know him. I knew of him, didn't know him. I became my morning. I became my morning. I don't believe in premonition. Like at all. I don't. Um, What I do believe is that there are certain things that take place. And when you have your connection with God solid, you can leave everything with Him. Whether you knew it was coming or not, whether you're prepared or not, once you know God, you don't have to worry about what happens because you can always take it at the time to Him. So, no, I don't believe in the premonition type thing. I don't, that's a spiritist kind of idea. It's not a God thing at all. Um, can He season your soul for things that are coming that He knows about? I don't consider that premonition. I consider Him looking out for you. Um, there are some people that may get a dream of something that's going to happen, but I don't think that's everybody. What I do know that's everybody's to do is to hand off your cares to Him, which means whether I know it or not, I hand it off to Him. Whether I dreamt about it or not, I hand it off to Him. Whether I know about it or don't know about it, I hand it off to Him. I have to be so trusting of God that whether I was told about it in a dream or I accidentally stumbled upon it, God is the one ultimately in charge, and I have to entrust it to Him. I didn't do that with my father, and it led me down a path of absolute destruction because I dwelled in every form of anguish. I did not hand it off. I had no one that came to me to bring me out of that place. No one. The only person that met me where I was God. And His timing is always right. But having been through it and having encountered Him now, the persons I see in that place, I am now in a location where I can direct them to that encounter. I can help usher them before the one person that can get them out of that deep, dark hole of weeping and mourning. So, yes, there is a need and a place for mourning, and there is a place for weeping, but it is not a permanent spot at all. The absence of people in your life by death, it's going to have a remaining effect on you, but it shouldn't have a remaining hold on you. It shouldn't have a hold on you like that. It tells me that if you have perpetually handed yourself off to grief, is that you're telling God that He's not big enough to remove it. He's not big enough to remove it. That your fear and your mourning and your weeping outweighs the comforter. I want you to just think about what you're saying about God. If you say you believe Him, if you believe in Him, that your mourning, how you feel, is far more than God can handle. I'll answer your question like this 2%. I'll read your question first. When this world is over and in Revelation it says He will wipe away all tears, does that mean if our loved ones don't make it, He will make it that we don't remember them? Listen carefully. If, let me see the best analogy I can pull for this one. If you're hungry, like starving, right? You're starving. And you've been starving for a long time, just weeks now, no food. And someone takes you to a buffet, right? You're going to the buffet now. And you have one other person with you that wasn't starving, but they were hungry. Do you think for a minute that you're going to care how much they eat? Or are you going to be focused on the buffet? Because your starvation is it's eating you alive. You're going to eat. I don't care who's next to me. I don't care who came before me. I don't care who's coming after. I am now been brought to a buffet line and my focus is the food. I think the wiping away of every tear is just the presence of God on a permanent basis. He is the wiping away of every tear. It's Him. I want you to imagine this for a minute. You are starving for the presence of God in person, one on one. You can see Him, finally see Him. Do you really think? Do you really think that you're going to be focused on someone that you've lost at that point? I don't think you will. I don't think you're going to be, I don't think you're going to be worried about that at all. I think your entire soul will be elated with just the presence of God, and no one else will be even remotely a problem in thinking about you. You ain't gonna worry about them. You're in the presence of the ever living God, and you can see Him. See Him. I'm not gonna be worried about them. I'm just not. I'm sorry, but I will have my entire being filled by the one that made me. There will be a time for mourning, that's here. There'll be a time for rejoicing, which is there. But hear me out. While you're here, while you're here, your mourning, your pain, your anguish only lasts so long. You cannot and ought not dwell there. You should never be content to live in weeping and mourning. It tells me that you are refusing to hand off that which He asked you to hand off. Hand it off. Give it up. Relinquish your grasp on what you believe you should hold on to. So, yes, there is a time to cry. And some of us feel the pain of others more than some. Some of us are able to identify others' pain inside ourselves. That's a measure that God gave you. He's made that clear to me. But what He did tell me, though, in my approaching Him to get my answer, was this idea that it's for a time. It's for a time. My 30-year battle with it was my doing, not His. But he did find a way to use it. And he's continuing to find a way to use it. Where do you draw the line to help someone constantly coming to you over and over for the same thing to the point it makes me feel drained, or am I being taken advantage of? They're using you as though you were God. What they should be doing is taking all of that to God Himself, not to you. Now, this is 1 hour, okay? 1 hour that we've been talking. I gave my experience. I listened to some of what you guys had to say. I told you my walk. I told you where to go. And that should be it. There will be some of you that will still be struggling with handing stuff over. I understand. But if you inbox me and say I'm still struggling, I'll tell you the same answer. Then get before God. And I mean it, like, if you have to weep and mourn, do it before God. If you're going to let anything go, let it go before God. If you're going to be crying your brains out, do it before God. You get in some quiet spot, get in your car, go to some peak, go somewhere quiet, go somewhere away from people, and you bawl if you have to God. You hand everything off. And you be as frank as you can with them. This is what you tell that person, Pippa. Be as blunt as you can. I can't do this. This is impossible for me. And you will be right. You can't do it. But he can. He can. Sackcloth and ashes if you have to. Our problem is that we feel, no, you can. Here's, understand this. You know what? I'm not going to tackle that topic yet. I'll do that. I'll do that another time. I'll do that another time. Hand off everything. Everything. He's already in your mind. He already knows what you're thinking anyway. He knows exactly what you think about him. Some of us don't want to say it because we don't want to say it, but you think it. He already knows. Here's the advantage of saying it. Now you have said it out loud. It's a committal thing. You've said it out. You have to tell these people that are coming to you constantly for the same thing, take the same thing to God. Be as diligent as you are coming to me with the same thing. Be that way with God. You remember the story in the Bible with the lady that went to the king and the judge that was constantly going back and back and back and back until the judge said, fine, fine, I'll give you what you want. She went to the person in power that could give it to her. Take it to take it to him. Repeatedly if you have to. You know what that does either way? It keeps you talking to him. If you keep going to God for the same thing, you know what you're still doing? Is talking to him. It's communication. We have a basic problem as humans. We esteem humans in a higher regard than we do God sometimes. We will more want to call up a friend and talk to a friend about something, but we won't pick up the main line to talk to God about anything. And if your friend's a true friend, he'd direct the call. He'd forward it. He'd forward the call straight to God and have you talk to him instead of that friend. He's always going to tell you to communicate more with him, Jackie. Always. He's never too busy. Never. And his goal has always been the same. It's not your happiness, it's his glory. And if his glory can be seen through your life, his glory, do not ever think that your happiness is his goal. His glory is his goal. Here's the advantage of his glory: when it's done through you, you experience joy. You don't get happy, you get joyous. And that's way more permanent than happiness. When he has gotten his glory through you, you experience joy. Allow it. Allow it. If you have a problem that's causing you to mourn, that's causing you to weep, before it becomes a burden to yourself, take it to God. He left the avenue open for you. He created the curtain being torn so you can enter into the Holy of Holies and speak to him. Do it. You'll be amazed what handing that off does. Clarity. You can hear him better. And he can finally do what he needs to do for his kingdom through you. Just remember, it's for him, not for you. This is not about you. This is about him. It's always going to be about him. It's always going to be about him. Recap again for the topics next week, so we have a grand understanding of what those topics are. Let me grab them here. Da, 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 da. Hang on. All right. Monday, the ecstasy of forgiveness. Tuesday, the purpose of fasting. Wednesday, salvation versus relationship. Thursday, the message of Mary. And Friday, the Gideon effect. Okay, that's the topic lineup for next week. The ecstasy of forgiveness. It's not going to be what you think it is. The purpose of fasting, salvation versus relationship, the message of Mary, and the Gideon effect. And just a heads up, it's not his mom I'm talking about. Okay? it's not Jesus's mom we're talking about, not that Mary. Then you're going to say I'm reading too much, you know? Hang on. So, this is about Mary that sat at the feet of Jesus, that Mary. Okay, so I just want people to be sure that you understand which Mary I'll be talking about. Okay, I'm not trying to say that Mary the Saint Mary and worship Mary kind of. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. And the ecstasy of forgiveness is not what most people would think either. It's it's going to be a knock on people that seem to thrive on forgiveness only. Okay. Okay. Good. Scrolling at the bottom, for those of you who have that you took it to God already, and it's something that you're gonna be doing or not doing, there are your options there. Um, anything you want to mail, there is my P.O. box. Last name is Brown, by the way, in case you need to have a full name. And it's Brown with an E on the end. If you have to send anything, hate mail, whatever, that's fine too. I'll take that. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. I'm going to try and rest up this weekend. I did most of the hard work I had to do for the house last week, so this weekend should be a good one. Should be a restful one. I should be able to sleep on Saturday. Sleep in till about 8 o'clock. Man, that'll be good to sleep until 8. That'd be nice. In any case, thank you for all of your support. Thank you for sharing, for liking, and for your subscriptions. Thank you for all your encouraging words in my inbox. And I do hope that whatever issue you may have that you're going through right now, that you do find it before God and Him alone. And however He seems to deal with it, you let Him deal with it. But you got to go to Him. You got to go to Him. You got to go to Him. Wisdom calls to you from the streets. Please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die.